Hey everyone, me Kevin here. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin was just interviewed and he tells us when stimulus checks are going to arrive. He also tells us how rental relief is going to work, gives us more detail on the PPP, gives us more detail about what he thinks about the economy and people just investing their stimulus checks into the stock market. Folks, there is a lot of information in this interview and we've got a bunch of new details. Let's just get right into it. Of course, right after I mentioned that you should use the coupon code down below to join the courses on building your wealth with stocks and real estate. Join me in the live streams every day the market is open. And of course, email me for a bundle at kevin@meetkevin.com if you want to consider getting multiple courses. All right, folks, let's listen to it.
Well, we're definitely in a much better position, and there's no question the first bill, the CARES Act, is the reason why we're here today and the economy has continued to rebound. But as you and I have talked about before, there are still parts of the economy that are particularly hard hit. As you know, we've been working on for months additional money for those parts of the economy, and we couldn't be more pleased that we got this done in time for the end of the year. The president wanted direct payments, so we will be sending out next week direct deposit. I expect we'll get the money out by the beginning of next week. $2,400 for a family of four, so much needed relief just in time for the holidays.
So I'm going to pause here and just mention the beginning of next week would be the 28th. Last time they sent checks, the checks hit on a Wednesday. They started sending them on Monday. They started hitting, maybe some people got them on Tuesday, but a lot of them hit Wednesday. So Wednesday the 30th seems to be a potential target right now. Now keep in mind, when Mnuchin says before the holidays, I think he just means before New Year's, since a lot of the holidays will be done by the 30th. But this is good news. The money can flow pretty quickly. It's also interesting, Donald Trump on Twitter and via Steve Mnuchin here is trying to take credit for the stimulus checks, which, hey, you know, not saying that's good or bad, but it is something to keep an eye on. Politically, everybody's going to be trying to take credit for these $600 checks coming out, which, in my opinion, are... I read something this morning that said they're much more like an antidepressant than they are a stimulant. Anyway, here we go.
We also have extensions of the PPP. You know how important this has been, Jim, to small business, particularly restaurants. So not only are we recycling $140 billion that's been sitting there that we've been waiting for approval, but we have substantial other money, so over $325 billion targeted for small business, much more directed. Congress also agreed to reinstate the tax deductibility on the PPP.
That's good. That's good for the PPP expenses, making sure those are tax deductible.
Expenses, so that'll be additional relief for small business. Yep. And I think, as you know, the president is particularly concerned about restaurants, so we restored the deductibility of meal expenses for business people. So we couldn't be more pleased. Took us too long to get here, but as we've said before, this is about kids and jobs and vaccines.
Now, earlier on our air, Senator Toomey said, wait a second, on the 600, that there are 93% of the people are employed in this country, and a lot of those people are going to get $600, and whether that's fair or whether it should go to people only who don't have jobs.
Pat Toomey consistently seems to be the guy, the Republican who's coming in going, let's just do less. Let's take away powers from the government, which I guess that aligns with oftentimes the Republican Party in this case.
Well, I think, as you know, the good news is this is a very, very fast way of getting money into the economy. And again, let me emphasize that people are going to see this money the beginning of next week. So it's very fast. It's money that gets recirculated in the economy, so people go out and spend this money, and that helps small business, and that helps getting more people back to work. Now, you're right. The good news is unemployment has come way down. So I think, as you know, we were worried about, something like a Great Depression again earlier in the year. But this is now much more targeted. I expect it's needed in a short period of time. And I think this will take us through the recovery. And let me just say, I'm going to push back. I heard your comments on vaccine distribution. I think the Department of Defense and HHS has a fabulous plan. This Project Warp Speed that the president invested literally billions and billions of dollars in.
Okay, so he's talking about vaccine here. We'll come right back to this. I do just want to say, I mean, he's right regarding the velocity of money in terms of how often a dollar circulates, right? So if you give a stimulus check and somebody spends it on buying something, that dollar could circulate through the economy 4, 5, 6 times. Unfortunately, a lot of sort of our money supply hasn't been circulating in the economy that much because a lot of people right now are saving. A lot of people are putting money into stocks or paying off debt, which is good. These are all very frugal things for individuals. But as an economy, it actually can hold us back. So if people start transitioning to being more of a consumer again, it's going to really be reflected in earnings at corporations here in 2021.
Leon has really paid off. And there's no difference that there's just a huge difference of where we are now versus where we were earlier in the year.
All right, so and I understand that, and I think Warp Speed has done amazing things. I'm on record saying that. How do the people in the small businesses actually get this money? Is it the same system as last time? And what do you do about the ones that didn't make it? Secretary Mnuchin, a lot of them just didn't make it to now.
Well, you're right. That is unfortunate, and we've said our job is not done until we get everybody back to work, and that's what this is about. It is a similar distribution as last time for the PPP. There'll be some additional programs also set up that are targeted. Let me just say, in the PPP, if businesses are down 25%, they'll be able to get a second check. We also added employer retention tax credits. Up to $10,000 per quarter per person. This is a very, very big incentive for small business as well. And
that'll be interesting to see how many quarters we get. So that's actually good to know. So we've got $10,000 per quarter per person at businesses. So that the employee retention credit is a credit that is handled by bosses, right? So it's something that they're going to have to handle. But we'll get some more details on that.
In fact, this is going to have a much-needed big impact. And in the PPP, also additional money, particularly for hotel and food services that have been hard hit.
Mr. Secretary, it's David Faber. We've spoken in the past, of course, about the back and forth about direct aid to state and municipalities. That's not a part of this bill, but they are going to be able to potentially use existing money in different ways. And I think there is at least some aid going to some of these transportation authorities. Can you tell us a bit more in terms of how, if you're not giving direct aid, it is potentially going to at least help maybe stabilize some budgets a bit?
Well, as you said, there's no question about that. I mean, first of all, let me just say we have a lot of money going to schools. We have over $80 billion going to schools. We want to make sure that kids can get back to school safely as appropriate, and that is an expense typically of the states. The money that we sent to the states last year, we gave them another year to use that money. And again, that was for COVID-related expenses. We're spending a lot of money on vaccine and distribution so that everybody gets the vaccine free and we get it to people. So there is not money to make up for revenue loss, but there is plenty of other money. And let me just say, places like California are having record tax revenues because of the capital gains associated with the great market recovery.
Yeah, keep in mind, a state like California, which has a very high state income tax, they do not have a capital gains tax, which means you actually pay ordinary income taxes. So if you're even selling stocks you've had over a year, you don't get any kind of break in a state like California. Is that another reason to leave California? I guess I got to talk to Lauren again.
Mr. Secretary, one thing that I'm trying to get a line on is some of these groups that got money that I think people are going to be concerned about. Live entertainment, local newspapers and broadcasters. I presume that I'm not a beneficiary of that, but that's always worth asking. Airline payrolls. These all seem kind of catch as catch can. Now, your interest had always been small business and business interruption insurance. I don't understand how these particular live entertainment, local newspapers, how did that get in?
Well, Jim, as you know, in any time getting a deal over the finish line, there's a lot of compromise that.
This is, by the way, a Democrat provision Schumer encouraged, having the SOS Act, which is the Save Our Stages Act, which specifically grants money to live venue operators. And we're expecting this also carried over to the PPP provisions, where you're getting this additional support for broadcasters and so on.
Is needed. So, this overall bill, I think, is fabulous. The airlines, there was broad bipartisan support for airlines. I think, if we hadn't given money before and give additional money, we'd have no airline industry. So we really need to keep the airlines available so that when the economy bounces back and people can travel, they're there. Airline workers have been hit at no fault of their own. There is some money for what's called small venues. Again, these venues have been shut down due to no fault of their own. But as you said, this is a large bill and has a little bit of everything in it for everybody.
For renters, can you discuss how this is going to keep people in apartments? 1 in 4 homes, 1 in 5 do rent. How does you calculate what rent is, and how do these people apply for this aid?
Good question.
Jim, as you know, there's lots of things the president and I would have done much earlier, when literally we had hundreds of billions of dollars that we just couldn't spend, and rent was one of them. The president did put together a moratorium to help those that were especially hard hit. But this is a much better program. This is now rental assistance. It'll be channeled through the states. The states are much better at executing this than having another federal program.
AKA every single state is going to have a different method for dealing with actually getting rental relief. That'll be interesting. And I think it'll take a while to set up. CARES Act time, it took the states 3 to 4 weeks to get these kind of programs set up.
And it will be much needed relief for, again, very targeted to the people who really, really need it.
Secretary, Jim and I have spent a lot of time, and Carl, talking over these last 9 months about the fate of restaurants. And I mean, how important they are to our overall economy. Some of the numbers are mind-boggling, what, 900 billion or so, and so many people employed or employed in adjunct industries that service those restaurants. So what do you tell the small restaurant owner right here about what this bill is going to be able to do for them in terms of helping them keep the doors open, particularly if they're reliant, for example, here in New York, on only outdoor dining right now during cold months?
Fascinating statement there, by the way, that restaurants make up $900 billion of the economy. Think about the economy as sort of a national pie of $21 trillion. $900 billion, that's like, what, 1 in 24th of the economy? That's a good slice.
Well, you're right. People don't realize how big the restaurant industry really is as an employer, and it tends to be very small businesses, but very large employment. And unfortunately, a lot of restaurants had to shut down. They just couldn't make it. There were people who were waiting for the second PPP check and just couldn't last long enough. But the good news is, for those businesses that did last, this is going to be the needed relief to get them through next year through the vaccine. And as you said, we have areas of the country where you have to eat outdoors. We have areas of the country where you can't even eat outdoors. I must say, listening to the medical professionals, I do think outdoor dining with proper social distancing and people wearing masks to and from the restaurants is something that I think in many places people can do. But you're right, the restaurant industry is particularly hard hit. And again, Congress decided to restore the deductibility, so that's of both meals as well as the expenses that restaurants had. So that's additional tax relief to those small businesses.
Mr. Secretary, this restaurant money was something you cared about tremendously and felt at a certain point maybe the Fed's money could go back to you and Congress.
Mnuchin then talks about the 13-3 facilities, about how great they were, even though they were used very little, and says now we've got a compromise. But let's go on to what Jim Cramer asks next.
In our world, $600 to individuals, I have Robinhood on tonight. They would tell you a massive amount of that money went to them. I mean, there's no really restrictions to those $600. There are a lot of people, a lot of younger people who invested it. Nothing wrong with that. But should it have been more targeted to certain, let's say, food? I mean, like food stamps. How do you feel about maybe the unintended consequences of people investing?
Jim, first let me just say there is money for nutrition, food, as you said, and agriculture support in here. There's money for child care. There's even money for broadband to make sure that kids have access to broadband. There's money in the Provider Relief Fund for more medical programs. Again, the effective part about the direct payments is they get into the economy very quickly. As you said, you can't target them, but the fact that we can get this much money into the economy in 1 week, let me tell you, I spoke to many CEOs who saw their business kind of the minute that money came into the bank account, they saw their business increase. And if some people who had extra money were fortunate enough to invest in the stock market at 18 or 20,000, they're doing pretty well today.
Absolutely.
He kind of brushed that one aside. He kind of said, hey, look, if people ended up putting the money in the stock market, oh well. All right, so we just got a lot of insights from Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. States are going to be running the rental relief programs. That's going to be something else. We'll see how that goes. If people invest the money, so be it. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin says the stimulus checks impact the economy pretty dang quickly. So who knows? Maybe that'll just boost the stock market to new highs again. We found out when stimulus checks are coming. We got a lot of insight here from Mnuchin. I'd say this was a successful interview. So obviously, huge shout out to CNBC. I'm still honored that I got to have an episode on CNBC, which I will link down below if you want to check it out. And folks, we will see you in the very next video. Just make sure to check out that coupon code down below for the courses and email me if you want a bundle. Thanks everyone. Bye.